In this video, I'm going to give you the long version of the model of the mind. Now, again, I don't necessarily give all of this information to a client who comes for a consultation. I'm just giving them the parts that are relevant to whatever they've come to work on. But this is really important information to have. By knowing this, you'll be able to explain to people how their belief systems are formed, why they do the things they do. You'll help them to be able to make connections between their internal world and their external one. So again, whether it's for your consultations or just general knowledge, this is good information to have. Now, this is a concept that dates way back to Freud, the idea that we have two parts to our mind, the conscious and the subconscious. I like to use the iceberg analogy when we're talking about the mind because the conscious mind is like this little part that floats above the surface. It's the part that we see, the part that we're aware of. But then there's this huge mass beneath the surface that we're not aware of. And it's that part that can sink the ship. Let's look more closely at the conscious mind. Now, this is the part of your mind that you're using to make sense of what I'm saying. It's the part of your mind that's floating above the surface in the iceberg analogy. It is logical, rational, reasonable. It's the part of your mind that knows good from bad, safe from unsafe, healthy from unhealthy. It's your checkbook balancing part of your mind. It's also your short-term memory. If I were to ask you right now what your third birthday was like, how much information would you be able to give me? Probably not a whole lot. Unless something really significant happened on that day, like you got a pony or that's the day your parents announced they were divorcing, you probably don't have a lot of recall because you're searching in your short-term memory for something that's actually long-term. So your conscious mind is the last 24 to 48 hours or so. Then we either forget it or we deposit it into the long-term memory, the subconscious mind. Your conscious mind is also where your willpower comes from. So if you've ever started the day going, okay, today I'm really going to do well, I'm going to succeed at whatever your goal is, and you're really ready to go, but then by noon it starts kind of fading and wearing off, well, your conscious mind operates only 5 to 10% of your behavior. So if 5 to 10% of you really wants to achieve your goal, but the other 90 to 95% has a different belief or agenda, your conscious mind is not going to get you very far. Now, this is important to understand when clients come to see you because often they're very frustrated with themselves that they haven't been able to achieve whatever it is they've come to achieve. And so by pointing out to them that the part of their mind that they've been using to try to muscle their way into the results they want is really just their conscious mind, it operates such a very small percentage of their behavior. If we want to make a lasting change, we have to get the subconscious on board. Now let's talk about the qualities of your subconscious mind. I'm going to be referring to all of these things on this slide kind of together. So first off, your subconscious is illogical. It has no ability to reason. It can't see around corners. It can't do a pros and con list. It can't think about the consequences of your behavior. In fact, it operates very much according to the pleasure principle. What do I need right now to feel good? But it doesn't understand that what you're doing right now to feel good may have long-term consequences. So again, your subconscious is completely illogical. It's also protective in nature. Its primary function is to keep you safe. And this is a charming combination because being illogical, it will sometimes try to keep you safe from something that isn't actually threatening to you or something that was a threat once but no longer is. Your subconscious is your long-term memory. Remember when I asked you a little while ago what happened on your third birthday? Well, in a conscious state, we probably wouldn't have a whole lot of recall. But if I put you in hypnosis and asked you that same question, although you wouldn't remember all of the details, you would have much fuller recall than you would if you just tried to answer that question in a conscious state. And so your subconscious is your long-term memory. All of your life experience is stored within your subconscious. It's basically a storehouse of all of your life's events. And it works by association. So here's how all of this fits together. The job of the subconscious is to protect you. So it stores all of your life experiences, and very simplistically, it kind of classifies them as dangerous or safe. And then it refers to those past experiences to know how to handle a new experience. So let's say you get bit by a dog when you're 4 years old. Your subconscious, because it's protective, classifies dog as unsafe. Then, 6 months later, you're playing in a park and you see a dog. Very, very rapidly, so quickly you don't even know it's happening, your subconscious goes into the files and finds the dog file to see how it's classified it. It recognizes that it's being classified as unsafe, and so it sounds the alarms. It makes you experience panic or fear so that you'll get away from this current dangerous dog. Now, the subconscious is so efficient at classifying things that you could even find yourself feeling panicky at a picture of a dog in a book, or a dog on TV, or a stuffed dog. Again, it's completely illogical. Once dog gets the label unsafe, your subconscious will do whatever it can to avoid it. So it works by association. If something gets a negative association, stay away. Don't do any of that. Bad idea. Even if the thing is not actually negative. For example, most of us like to get hugs, right? A hug is generally thought of as a good thing. But what if you had to hug Aunt Martha, who always smelled like garlic and had bad BO and held on a little bit too tight? See what I'm getting at here? If something that we normally see as positive gets a negative association by the subconscious will say no more of that. And it also works the other way as well. If something gets a positive association, the subconscious will say, let's do that more, even if it's not necessarily a positive thing. So for example, if somebody experienced sexual trauma and it was dangerous for them to be in their body, they might take off and be out of body. The subconscious goes, oh, that's what keeps me safe, being out of body. So now later in life, the person's really ungrounded. They have a lot of kind of out of body, feeling out of touch experiences because the subconscious thinks, well, that worked for me back then. That was a good idea. It must still be a good idea. All right, so let's look at how our beliefs are formed. What is in the subconscious and how does it get in there? So when we're born, we only have our subconscious mind. This means we don't have our rational mind when we're little. Anybody who's ever had a baby knows that it's around 2 or 3 before they begin to develop their rational mind. So what that means is that for those first few years of our lives until the rational mind begins to develop, we have no ability to reason or to censor anything we're being told. The subconscious just takes in whatever we're told, whatever we're exposed to, as though it were fact. Now we take in messages from our environment both directly and indirectly. So a direct message is something that a person actually says to you. So for example, having a negative critical parent who tells you you're worthless, or a teacher who tells you you're bad at math. When we're little, we don't have the ability to censor those messages. They just go straight into the subconscious. Remember, the subconscious is not the reasoning part of the mind. It doesn't go, oh, maybe that person was just in a bad mood, or maybe they're projecting their own feelings about themselves onto me. The subconscious has no ability to do that. The messages just go into the subconscious and become part of our belief system. Indirect messages are messages that we pick up from observing somebody else's example, noticing their body language, their behavior, how they act in the world, their tone of voice. So for example, when we're little, we're learning a whole lot about the world by observing our parents. They don't even have to say anything. We're learning what a man's role is, what a woman's role is, what communication looks like, what affection looks like, what arguing looks like, what doing the household chores looks like. We're learning so many things without them ever saying anything because those messages are being given to us indirectly. So, if you were 2 years old, before that logical mind begins to develop, and I told you that that blue thing on your screen right now was a circle, you would just believe me if there had been nobody who got to you first to tell you otherwise. Again, you have no ability to censor, no ability to fight back against what I'm saying. My telling you that that's a circle would go straight into your subconscious, and it would take somebody a lot of work later to convince you otherwise. After 2 or 3, we begin developing our conscious mind. If you have children, this is the point in their lives where they would have been saying, why, all the time until you thought you were going to go crazy. Celebrate that. What that means is they're questioning things. That's their conscious mind beginning to form. Now, it takes until 8 or 9 years old for the conscious mind to fully develop, but at that time we now have a filter known as the critical factor for you hypno geeks that we can use to censor information that we're receiving. So now, being an adult, if I tell you that thing on the screen is a circle, you think, no, it isn't, she's crazy, that's a triangle, that's wrong. That is the feeling of your filter being in place. You felt a message come in and you could feel yourself arguing back and rejecting it. So you censored that message. That one did not end up inside your subconscious mind. But we're not out of the woods yet. The problem is the filter has holes in it, and at various times in our lives, those holes just open up, and it's like being a year old again. We're taking in messages from the environment around us, from the people around us, without being able to censor them. So let's look at times when the filter is open and messages are slipping through into your subconscious. It happens when we are emotional or overwhelmed. Remember I said earlier that the subconscious is the seat of all of your emotions. If you're ever in a highly emotional state, you're really anxious, you're really angry, you're really jealous, whatever, your conscious mind is left the building. You're coming from your subconscious. What that means is any messages that you're getting from the world around you or ones you might be giving yourself, we all have a voice inside of our own heads, and so we're constantly programming our own minds. Those things are being deposited into your subconscious at that time. The subconscious is also open to receiving messages anytime we're around somebody we place in a position of authority. We're taught from the time we're little to respect the big people. They know what they're talking about. Big people are like gods who have all of the answers. And so when we're around somebody we perceive to be an authority, even when we're adults ourselves, we tend to be susceptible to the messages they give us. This, incidentally, is why placebo works. We tend to place doctors on a pedestal. We go see the doctor knows things, and the doctor gives us a pill and tells us this is going to make you feel better. And even though the pill was sugar or placebo, we actually 38% of the time respond by getting better. It's not because the pill did anything, it's not because the doctor did anything, it's because we took a message into our powerful subconscious mind and the subconscious responded to it. That filter is also open when we're around somebody whose opinion matters to us. This is why the messages we get from our peers or those closest to us matter so much, because those people are kind of programming our minds as well. The filter is also open when we're under the influence of drugs or alcohol or under anesthetic. And so again, the conscious mind checks out, but the subconscious at those times is readily available. This is actually kind of interesting. They've taken people who were anesthetized for some sort of surgery or procedure, put them in hypnosis, and they were able to recall under hypnosis things that were said or done when they were under the effects of anesthetic, things that could be verified by somebody else in the room. And so the subconscious doesn't sleep. It can't be anesthetized. It's ever present. And when we're in a state where we're open, it's constantly taking in messages. And because of its sheer size, whatever is in the subconscious mind wins. So let's say, for example, that person who got bit by a dog has a belief on a subconscious level that dogs are threatening. Now they can know intellectually that dogs are not threatening, that maybe some dogs are, but not all of them. They can know intellectually that they want to be comfortable and feel at ease around a dog, but knowing that intellectually doesn't change anything on a subconscious level. Whatever is going on a subconscious level wins every single time. So why use hypnosis? I think you're probably beginning to piece this all together. In hypnosis, we can access the subconscious mind. When a person is experiencing a deeper brainwave level state, such as is created with hypnosis, the filter is open. We can access and speak to the subconscious. We can update old beliefs or old programs that are running. If somebody has a belief on a subconscious level and we try to change that in the conscious state, it really makes no difference. I can spend all day telling somebody who has OCD that they don't need to check the doors and windows for an hour before they go to bed, but that's not going to stop them from having this overwhelming urge to do so, or this incredible anxiety if they don't. When I can speak to their subconscious and give their subconscious a different way of looking at things, a different way of doing things, now the equation changes. The subconscious runs so much of your behavior that when we give that part of your mind something to do, it's so much easier to accomplish it. We can also in hypnosis trace back to the origins of a behavior or emotion. So let's say a client comes in and they've got a phobia, but they have no idea where it came from. Because we can access the long-term memory of the person in hypnosis, we can figure out what was responsible for whatever they came in to address. So having access to the long-term memory is really useful in helping a person to understand how something has affected them and thereby remove the impact of that event. And because the subconscious is the part of the mind that is creative, we can also help the client to find solutions to problems that they might not have considered otherwise. I'd like to share a case study with you that's a really good illustration of the subconscious and how it works in its charming, illogical way. And yes, this is a real story. I had a client come to see me a number of years ago who was struggling with something that I'd never heard of at that point. I thought it was a joke or a prank phone call when she initially called me. She couldn't touch her belly button, or at least that's how it started. So initially the problem was that she was just uncomfortable with any attention to her belly button. She didn't like to be poked there. She couldn't wear a waistband that went across her navel. She'd avoid any sexual contact that had to do with that area. But then one day things got worse. She was out in public and saw somebody else's belly button exposed and had a full-blown panic attack and had to go home. And because of that, she became fearful of when is it going to happen again. If you've ever experienced a panic attack, sometimes one of the worst things about it is the unknown. It could happen again at any moment, so maybe I need to avoid situations where it could possibly occur. So she was barely leaving her house. Then she saw nudity on TV one day, flipping through the channels, had another panic attack, and couldn't watch TV anymore. In fact, she would get anxious just looking at the remote because, again, you don't know what might show up on the screen if you push one of those buttons. It was around this time that she started seeking out counseling. She ended up finding a counselor that she was with for a year. They did almost weekly counseling sessions around this area and couldn't get any results. So that's when she came to see me. Now, she told me that she reached out to me because she figured she must have some kind of repressed sexual trauma that was responsible for this issue. So let me just take a moment here to talk about that. I never make any assumptions when a client comes to see me as to where a symptom stems back to. I'm working with the creative mind. If I put this client in hypnosis and I said, go back to the sexual trauma that's responsible for your belly button issue, her subconscious could make up a memory. Now you've got somebody with false memory. So you have to be really careful about how you take people back and how you help them to become aware of how things have impacted on them. I also don't ever want to do something where a client's going to relive some experience. You have to take them back with safety so that they're observing it from a distance. So having said that, we examined where this fear of her touching her belly button came from. She recalled being 2 years old, sitting in a bathtub playing with her belly button, and her mom, who was there, said, "Oh, you don't want to unscrew that or your legs are going to drop off." Ba-dum-bum. Now, my client was actually kind of annoyed by this. She said to me, "I'm having huge symptoms. I'm barely leaving my house. I'm having panic attacks. I can't even watch my TV. It's not because my mom told me a joke when I was 2 years old." But I understand how the subconscious works. So my response was, let me address this and I'll follow up with you in a week. If you still have symptoms, we can go further. So this is what her subconscious needed to hear. Now, everything I said, of course, she knew intellectually, but knowing something intellectually doesn't necessarily mean that the subconscious knows it as well. Her subconscious needed to hear. Your mom was telling a joke. You're not going to lose your legs if you touch your belly button. In fact, that's physically impossible. If it was true that people could lose their legs if they touched their belly button, how are people getting belly button piercings? How are people wearing pants that go across their waist? We should be a society of people in wheelchairs. Now, I'm sure that during that session, that client was sitting there going, I can't believe I'm paying you for this. This is the stupidest thing I've ever heard. But her subconscious was going, oh my God, that's true. Wow, oh, my bad, my bad. When I followed up with her in a week, all of her symptoms were gone. Now, the big mystery was, why did this come up at all, right? She was 2 years old when her mom told her that. She was 27 or 28 when she came to see me. So it sat underground for a number of years, a couple of decades, as a matter of fact. The big mystery for me is, why did it come up when it did? We never got so far as to figure that out because the client didn't need to come back. Her symptoms going away was good enough for her. She didn't need to come back to satisfy my curiosity. But I like this example because it shows the nature of the subconscious. Logically, we know that this is a physically impossible thing, but the subconscious is not the logical part of the mind. It is protective. If the subconscious thinks that you're going to lose your legs if you touch your belly button, then don't touch your belly button. And you don't want to see that happening to somebody else. So if their belly button is out, get out of there. Run away. Don't be a part of that. Remember, she was 2 years old, so that was before that conscious mind was formed. No filter to censor the message from mom. And the fact that that message came from her mom makes it particularly poignant. At that point in her life, probably all through her life, her mom is her main authority. Your mom is your first teacher, the first person who tells you the grass is green and cats have kittens and cows go moo. So when mom tells you that touching your belly button and screwing your belly button is going to cause you to lose your legs, you believe her. So to me, this is a wonderful illustration of how the subconscious works and how it's so different from how we function on a conscious level. There was a study conducted by Dr. Alfred Barrios that was published in a psychological journal as well as in American Health magazine in 1987, comparing the effectiveness of talk therapy, psychotherapy, to hypnotherapy. According to the study, talk therapy was only 38% effective after 600 sessions. Now that seems like not very effective for a massive number of sessions. If you think about somebody who's got an urgent issue, they're depressed or suicidal or they've got an eating disorder, they don't have 600 sessions worth of time to put into resolving their problem, not to mention the cost of all of those sessions. Now, again, I'm not sure how he arrived at that number. That seems like way too many sessions, but I do agree with the stats he came up with for hypnosis. According to the same study, hypnotherapy was 97% effective after 6 sessions, and that's pretty consistent with the kind of results that I get. Now, I do want to say here that there's a lot of really bad hypnosis going on. Hypnosis should not be a client passively resting in a chair while the hypnotist reads positive affirmations essentially to them. Think about the belly button client I was just sharing with you. If I just put that client in the chair and said, touch your belly button, it's safe to touch your belly button, go ahead and touch it, I don't even know how I'd feel the hour, we would never have gotten anywhere. Her subconscious had a belief that touching her belly button was going to cause her to lose her legs. And unless I understand that and I address that, we're not going to get anywhere. So when it says hypnotherapy is 97% effective after 6 sessions, I'm assuming that that's the type of hypnotherapy I teach, where you'll be uncovering and addressing the cause of the client's issue instead of just trying to suggest away their symptoms. I could have done a million sessions with that client just trying to suggest away your symptoms, and we never would have gotten anywhere. We've got to be working on uncovering and identifying the cause.